All right, Randy, we're live on the Books for Guys podcast. How are you today, man?
Man, Chris, I am great. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on your show, and especially after the last few months of my time here at the Fayetteville Public Library. I'm kind of excited in this role, in this capacity, to join you for this type of
Yeah,
conversation. So thank you so
absolutely. And
much for
Randy, I've
having
been
me.
I've been following you for a while on LinkedIn and been seeing all the cool things you do. I mean, you have a podcast. You are like all things Northwest Arkansas, which obviously I'm from the area, so I love seeing you highlight and spotlight people and businesses and just different aspects of Arkansas. People, I know there's a lot of people that listen and watch this that are either from that area or know of Northwest Arkansas, but there's a lot who probably haven't been there, can never say enough like how great of a place Northwest Arkansas is. And if you ever get a chance to go visit, you should definitely do that. So I love just all the stuff that you do to just spotlight the area because it's a lot of people don't realize how great it is.
No, they really don't know. It's Arkansas typically has historically been a flyover state, right? So people going from the east to the west or the west to the east or vice versa. But now more people are taking notice. Of course, we got this little country
Yeah.
store up the street called Walmart that is doing some amazing things. But we also have other amazing brands like Tyson and JB Hunt and others that are doing that cover the globe, if you will. And so there's a lot actually happening here, and I'm certainly proud to call Fayetteville home. And again, as I said earlier, being a part of the Fayetteville Public Library was one of the was awarded the best library in America in 2005, and it's only gotten better. It's 190,000 square feet of just amazing space for the whole community of Northwest Arkansas, let alone, of course,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
citizens of
absolutely.
Fayetteville.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I was going to ask you, Randy, because you're all things Northwest Arkansas, but you hadn't always been in Arkansas. So I was curious to know your story of just kind of,
No.
what's the early story of Randy? What got you to Northwest Arkansas?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking. So I was born in Richmond, Virginia, but I grew up right in Teaneck, New Jersey, which is a bedroom community for New York City. I could literally see the top of the George Washington Bridge from my bedroom. So I'm a city boy at heart. I grew up in the Northeast. I went to school at Howard University in Washington, D.C., spent some time out in California on the West
Okay.
Coast, or the left coast, as we call it, in the Bay Area primarily. I was kind of in the Bay Area before the dot-com boom, right? I know I don't look that old. I was there before. I actually had my office in the same building where Wired magazine started. So I've kind of been around, been there, done that. Came back east, ostensibly originally at the time to go back to school and get my MBA. Ended up falling backwards into a job at ABC News, and got to satisfy my appetite for journalism there at ABC, even though I studied journalism in undergrad, and then went up to Boston and got a great job in the management consulting space, working with a firm at the time called Zweig, White and Associates. And then I met a girl. And and 24 years later, and three sons later, we've still been married, and I've just been kind of
Yeah.
rolling with it ever since. And the reason why I'm in Northwest Arkansas is because of the guy that founded that company that I just mentioned, Zweig, White and Associates. I joined them in '97 as a consultant and quickly became an owner. The company was acquired. We all left eventually, and he came here to Northwest Arkansas. And so, never in a million years, Chris, did I ever
Yeah.
think I would be living in Northwest Arkansas. As a matter of fact, if you had said that to me even a year or two before
Yeah. Ain't no way.
2014, I would have been like, "You're crazy." Yet yet and still here I am. And so we moved here about 11 years ago, and the company that I used to work for, I came back to work for, and that's what brought me to Northwest Arkansas. And then I stayed there for 5 years. I still consult with them, and then in 2019, I started the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast, which covers the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life here in the Ozarks. And it's essentially the podcast I would have wanted when I first moved here in 2014, but it didn't exist. So in 2019, I created it, and 400 plus episodes later, I haven't looked back. And I always enjoy pressing record. We have a brand new episode every Monday, and it has been a blessing to me because I've had a chance to cover So many amazing people and so many amazing organizations. And the one thing I will say about Northwest Arkansas, and then I'll get off my soapbox, is that I've been all over the country. I've actually lived in a few places outside of the country. And Northwest Arkansas is arguably one of the most giving areas that I've ever lived in. People are generous with their time. People, businesses are, I mean, yes, everybody's competitive, right? But I've seen businesses help each other out, business owners help each other out. And the thing that really resonates with me about Northwest Arkansas is that people actually really care. Not that they don't in other parts of the world and other parts of the country. I get it. But my grandfather used to say it's a pitiful frog that doesn't praise its own pond. And I try to give as much praise as I can to Northwest Arkansas when and where possible. And so, an opportunity like this to speak with you, I just have to share that. So, anybody listening that isn't familiar with Northwest Arkansas and wants to learn more, hit me up afterwards, and we'll make sure that Chris puts my information in the show notes because I think it would be this is a place where the growth is happening. I mean, we're 600,000 people now, and we're projected to be about 1 million people. It's one of the fastest growing MSAs in the United States, and so
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
going
Yeah, I
nowhere
think I
but
saw a
up,
report earlier this
hopefully.
week that Northwest Arkansas, or Arkansas as a state, a lot of it Northwest Arkansas, had this year was the number one move in state. There's several states where they're experiencing people moving away from. Arkansas is one of the handfuls that are taking a lot of people in because of the opportunity, the
Yeah.
growth and
Yeah.
friendliness and
Yeah. Well,
business.
I
I used to recruit people to come to Northwest Arkansas. I wish your podcast would have been around then, because that's one I could have shared with them and said, "Hey, here, listen to some stories of what we got going on here." But it was always funny if I could just get someone on a plane to get to Northwest Arkansas. I could drive them around. You'd be like, "Here's where your kids would go to school. Here's what
yeah.
we've got to do." There's not
Right.
just pastures. I'm like, man, we got a Top Golf now. We got Dave and Buster's, Roost Chris, good schools, and everyone would just be so wide eyed, like, I didn't have any idea this place was like this.
Listen, you said a mouthful, and I'll give you one additional anecdote to that. Before I moved here, my boss and dear friend at the time, Mark Zweig, was like, "Oh, you should bring your wife out, come visit Northwest Arkansas." And I was like, "I'm not moving there." And he was like, "No, you don't have to move." Anyway, she came out. We visited in October of 2014 and stayed right downtown Fayetteville. And my wife did a tour. She toured the schools, and Mark kind of wined and dined her that week. But they also took her to this library. And she called me up right away. She was like, "You have to see this library." And I'm like, "Babe, it's a library. You've been to one, you've been to them all." Lo and behold, I had no idea. And once I came here, I saw it and I'm just like, yeah, okay, I get it. And then less than 3 months later, our moving truck was pulling into our rental because we rented for a year before we bought just to get acquainted with the area, which I always recommend people to do. No matter what new area you're going to, definitely rent before you buy because you just never know where you fully want to live until you've had a chance to explore a place. And so, yeah, it's just that's just been good advice that has served me well in multiple places that I've lived throughout my life. So a little bit of encouragement there. But yeah, I mean, we ended up here, and I honestly could have never imagined it. But I am so glad that I took the leap of faith because this place has returned to me sevenfold
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
I've
well,
brought to it.
it's cool that you explained your podcast too, because I was always curious what led you to making that, and it sounds like it's a good podcast for people who live there, who get to learn about people and businesses maybe they haven't, thought about or come across before, but also for people who are considering moving there or new residents. It's for them. If it's for you when you were coming, to Northwest Arkansas, you wish you'd have had something to kind of, get some more information through and whatnot. And that's one avenue that people can explore if they want to listen to get some information that way.
Yeah. Well, it is totally a recruiting tool. I have shared it with a number of HR managers throughout Northwest Arkansas. My podcast, I mean, I personally know for a fact several senior individuals, both at Walmart and at Tyson, and one at JB Hunt, that I know for a fact said that listening to my podcast gave them the information that they needed and also put them at ease about relocating to Northwest Arkansas because they really weren't sure what they were going to get and they wanted to learn a little bit more about the place and the people that call Northwest Arkansas home. And that's honestly what my podcast has always endeavored to do.
Yeah.
and what we
Love
continue
that.
to do
Love
every
that. Yeah, and
day.
you have over 400 episodes, so that's incredible. A lot of amazing people out there, a lot of amazing businesses. But Randy, talk a little bit about your new role, Director of Communications at the Fayetteville Public Library. So your wife, she experienced it when she first came to visit, and now you're a part of the Fayetteville Library. Just talk a little bit about your work there and what you do.
I mean, as this would be appropriate to the topic of your podcast, I was that kid that was always in the library, right? And so I remember a day when going to the library, your card catalog, I would get, at the time, I would get books on tape. There were a lot of things that I did at the library, and I would spend my Saturday afternoons at the library when I wasn't doing sports. So the library has always hold, and also being the parent, the child of both my parents were teachers. So being the child of a teacher, you didn't have a choice. So my reading was always at a higher level just because I like to read and people always read to me. And that's why we encourage parents that have younger kids to read as many books as possible that you can, and especially in the early formative years, because there is science that backs up the exposure of reading to young minds can really help cement things and help them read at a much higher level earlier on in their school age years. And so I've always had an affinity for libraries, and of course, this library, I told you the story why I really ended up liking this library, but I couldn't in a million years have envisioned myself in the role that I'm in right now. I did get the chance when I first started the podcast, I looked at all of the change agents in my community. So I would have coffee with them, I would sit down with them and learn their story and tell their story on the podcast. One of those individuals was David Johnson, who is the current executive director of the Fayetteville Public Library. And he and I sat down and he shared his whole story with me, both his personal story as well as his journey to becoming the chief librarian and director of this beautiful facility. And we became fast friends. And so, fast forward 6 years, and this job came up out of nowhere, and I happened to see it on LinkedIn. And I reached out and I said, "Hey, I didn't know that you were
Yeah.
hiring for this position," because I knew the person that was in it previous to me. And so he said, "Yeah, we are." And I said, "Well, I might ask you to put our friendship aside because I'd like to maybe throw my hat in the ring." But I also put it on. I also said to him, if you don't think it's a fit, it's fine too, and it won't ruin anything between us. And he laughed, and we ended up sitting down for about 3 hours to talk about the position. I went through the process, and there were a lot of people that applied for it, and I was very thankful that they chose me. I am pinch myself every day that I come into this space. And I don't know what it is. I feel smarter when I walk into a library. I don't know if I look smarter, but it's just something about being in a library, being around all of this knowledge and information. And then on top of all that, Chris, the library staff here is second to none. And I think it's a theme that you see in a lot of libraries where you don't work at a library to get rich. That's just not the way that it works. You work at the library because you have a passion for knowledge. You probably have a passion for helping other people. And books may be an important part of your life. And that's kind of what I've seen with each and every person that's on staff here at the library, from the entry level person in facilities and maintenance all the way up to the top librarians. And so they all love being here and they love serving the patrons and the public that
That's
come through
incredible.
these
That's
doors.
incredible. And I appreciate you talking about the importance of reading, that it had, the impact it had on you as a young man, and encouraging others to read as much as possible. And that's really the mission of Books4Guys. It's, encouraging young guys to pick up a book. And we're really big on reading something you're interested in. If you like sports, there's so many sports books out there.
Yeah.
There's so many books about your favorite players or your favorite coaches or your favorite teams. Or hey, if you're interested in fantasy, there's so many fantasy books out there, or business books. So whatever you're interested in, that's what we try to do, is get books in the young guys' hands that they're actually interested in, so that they'll actually read it, take something from it, pick up another book, start that curiosity and growth. We kind of joke, as you grow up, a lot of, nothing against teachers in schools, but you get kind of told what to read. And a lot of times maybe you're not interested. So it kind of
Right.
stunts your passion for reading. And in my personal story, I really didn't start reading for enjoyment until college or a little bit after. And I'm always laughing because I tell people, the stuff I was reading, I was like, "Man, if I'd have read this in junior high or high school, I coulda learned a lot and used a lot of this." And so that's where our hopefully, Randy,
Yeah.
Books for Guys can help get books into young men's hands earlier and kinda start that journey like you were able to have, the enjoyment of reading and learning
Yeah.
and personal growth, and just once you experience that, you can't get enough of it. You just wanna keep reading and keep learning and keep doing that. And so and that's why I like having these conversations, with people like yourself to really spotlight that aspect of it and the importance of it.
Yeah. And I want to add one thing to that, Chris, is that especially for the young men that are listening to this, that are being encouraged by somebody else that really cares about them to pick up a book and read it. There are so many different types of books. And what I encourage people to do, and I'm even doing this with my sons. I have a 20-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a 15-year-old. And I'm like, listen, you may not like reading the way I liked reading, but there are a lot of things that you can read that will allow you to kind of start to jumpstart that desire to read. And so I make my boys read graphic
Yeah.
novels, which they absolutely love. Manga, which is a type of cartoon. They have these really cool manga novels. And I may be butchering the name, but there are all kinds of graphic novels out there. And I actually started reading some of them too, because these novels all have a through line. They're really great storytelling, and that's one way to kind of dip your toe. So if you're listening to this and you think, I hate books, or I don't have time for that, maybe you like comic books. I don't know about you, Chris, but I loved comic books growing up. So I've read a lot of graphic novel comic books. There's a great Black Panther series that was written by Ta-Nehisi Coates. There are several, but then there's just a gajillion out there. And since I've been at the library, I've got a chance. We have a huge graphic novel section, and I think sometimes people don't realize that libraries carry those types of books. A lot of times people think we just
Yeah.
carry print, books, and so there's a little bit of everything for you at the library, in addition to also accessing electronic books, ebooks, as well as listening to books. So like Audible, but most libraries, and all of
Mhm.
this can be done for no cost. Right? You get a library card at your public library, and typically you will have access to amazing technology that didn't even exist 10 or 15 years ago that does now. And so every major library, every even smaller library has access to this material and ability, so that not only can you read a physical book, but you can also read on your iPhone or on your iPad or your Kindle, and you don't have to pay anything for it. That's the beauty of
Yeah. Yeah.
accessing
Yeah, I'm
literature
glad you
that
share
way.
all that because the power of libraries, man, there's so much out there. And again, I always say whatever you're interested in, there's a blueprint out there that you can go learn how to get better at something. I talk about this too. If someone's going through, a tough time in your life, chances are there's someone who's gone through something similar and they've written about it and they talked about how they got through it. So, encouragement, motivation, there's so many
Yeah.
things you can take from different enjoyment. You're talking about, graphic novels, anything. Just pick up something you like, and just what you can take from that and grow from is just incredible. You can't quantify the benefit of reading. Again, thank you for sharing all of that and the benefits of the Fayetteville Public Library, as well as any library.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would go so far as to say this, Chris. I would have a hard time taking, and I don't want the listeners to take this the wrong way. If you're a young man and you're trying to be all that you can be, right? I'm gonna take a phrase from the army. I would have a hard time taking you seriously if you don't have a library card. Like, all my kids have library cards. I've encouraged them, and I get it. I mean, I understand that. It's free though. There is no cost. There is no barrier to entry is low. It's so low that all you literally have to do is walk into your local public library and ask for a library card, and they will. I guarantee you, somebody on the other side of that desk is going to oblige you and give you that card, and that card literally will open up a world to you that you didn't know you had access to. And as I tell people nowadays, libraries have changed a lot, right? And so somebody listening to this that's like, well, I'm all about business, or I'm all about this or that. I don't care what it is, whether you're going into a trade, you're going into a culinary program, you want to start a new business, you can do all of that
Yeah.
starting at the public library. I mean, literally they do all that. We do CDL driving so that you can practice, so that you can get your CDL license, so that you can work for a company and get a really good living wage. You can go through trade training, and all of this is free. And most libraries do some variation of this. I get it that this library that I'm physically sitting in right now is above normal. But most libraries around the country, they over-index in making sure that the local community has access to the resources that they need to be as successful as they can be. And, I don't want that to be lost on anyone. And so I would simply say, and anytime I talk to a young man, one of the first things I ask them is, do you have a library card?
Mm,
And if they say no, I say, why not? I don't browbeat them or anything like that. I encourage them and tell them why they should get a library card. Start with that
yeah.
and then build from there. Right. Because a lot of times people just don't have I have a huge library. Probably got like 2,000 books in my own personal library. Everybody doesn't have that. And everybody doesn't come from a place where they can have a library like that. I just grew up around books. So, I mean, for me, it was always a foundational thing. But if you didn't, and I get it, doesn't mean that you can't start. Today can be the beginning of something special. And the first place that I would start is to just get a library card and then have somebody take you around your local public library and see how that will open up your eyes to everything that's available to you. We do so many things at this library that people didn't have any idea. I didn't know that that was available, and I didn't know it was free. And I'm like, it absolutely is. And that was why
Yeah.
libraries were founded in the first place. And so I really want to encourage your listeners to double down in that area. And so, especially because this is geared towards men. If you're a young man, a man, and you don't have a library card,
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
get you a library card. I'm telling you, you will thank us. You will thank Chris and I later for doing that, because it really will open you up to
Yep.
so many
That's right.
different
That's right. And Randy,
possibilities.
this is so cool because I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, man, Books for Guys. I've been running this community for a few years now, but you're the first person I've had on the podcast that actually works for a library and has shared the benefits of a library. Talk to people who love reading, but haven't had anyone share everything you can get, from your local library. And so thanks for sharing all of that because it's something that I probably take for granted as I had a library card growing up. So like yourself, I had access and I knew about it, but I haven't really shared that. Yeah, just not something I've thought about. So thank you for sharing that. So yeah, anything, go to your local public library and go see what it's all about because there's so many things you're probably not even thinking about that they offer
Absolutely.
books and all kinds of things. And so, yeah, very cool for you to share that, Randy. Well, I got one last question for you because I'm not going to let you out of here without asking. You said you had
Yes.
1,000 books in your personal library. So this may be a tough question for you.
Yes.
But what are some of your personal favorite books that you've read that have had a personal or professional impact on your life? And what do you like to recommend to others when they come to you for a good book recommendation?
Man, well, first of all, I appreciate that. As a Christian, I certainly encourage people to read the Bible. I think that, foundationally for me, that's my foundation. But I would encourage it. I mean, I've read the Quran, I've read a number of other religious texts, but I happen to be Christian, so I encourage people to read the Bible. So I start with that. That's the foundational book that I would encourage a lot of people to read. The next thing, there's a couple of books that I have, and I happen to bring some here, and you can't really see the covers, but the first one is The Infinite Game by
Anytime.
Simon Sinek. And Simon Sinek also has another book that I read. Well, Start With Why is a really great book, and then
Mm,
Leaders Eat Last, which is another great book. I do a lot of talks about leadership and about leadership development and why leaders have to lead from behind. And Simon Sinek does a really good job with that book. And then The Infinite Game, from just a practice of how we go out into the world and understand that what you're trying to do is nothing that is that is finite. I mean, yes, everything does have a beginning and an end, but especially in business and in other ways that you carry your life, you're trying to play an infinite game. And I think that Simon Sinek's book is really good, and it's a take on another book about that concept. The other book that I really love, because I love telling stories, and I love telling stories from a business perspective, is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend that. Chris Gillibo is somebody that I've followed for a number of years. He wrote this book called The Happiness of Pursuit. And it's about how you find happiness in the things that you do in your life, both in your vocation as well as in just in your everyday life. The other book that I really encourage people to read is Hal Elrod's The Miracle Equation. And he talks about the Miracle Money Makeover and the Miracle Morning Makeover. And he talks about how you develop unwavering faith and build extraordinary effort in the process. But his Miracle Morning Makeover, for me, really changed things. And so that book is probably over 10 years old now, but highly recommend that. He's written two books, and these are the two books. And then finally, what I would say is this: two things. One, there is a podcast out there called Founders. I would encourage people to listen to that, because I'm going to use an expression and a phrase that I say a lot. There is nothing new under the sun. Anything that you think you're going through that nobody else has gone through, that's not the case. Trust me when I say this, there is nothing new under the sun when it comes to the business situations and challenges that we go through. Other businesses have already gone through them. And then on top of that, if you take the time to study the biographies of amazing people. And I give you this book right here, because this book is called Giants of Enterprise. And it kind of talks about Andrew Carnegie, Feller, and so many others, but it really paints a picture. And again, these are all flawed human beings, right? So none of these guys are perfect. And as a matter of fact, that's kind of the beauty of it, because a lot of times we can see ourselves in other people that have had tremendous success. And I would encourage you to start reading biographies and start learning, taking time to learn more about these individuals and what they went through, because you might see yourself in their stories. You might see yourself in the beginning. I mean, Andrew Carnegie was dirt poor before he started U.S. Steel, and so he became, at one point in time, he was the richest man in the world. He was the Elon Musk of his day, and now we have his largesse to thank for all of the libraries around the country that are named the Carnegie Library. We have Carnegie Mellon University, and as somebody that has a large family from Pittsburgh, I have seen the and been the beneficiary of that type of investment. And it came from his ability to just be a really sound and strong businessman. And yes, some of his practices might have been suspect, but it is what it is. And I think it's important for us to learn from those that have come before us. And that's why biographies are so powerful. And that's why listening to the Founders podcast, if you don't like to read like these really thick biographies, can be a stand-in for you reading like a biography of like Ben Franklin or somebody like that, because you can gain insight and understanding. And the thing that's really nice about the Founders podcast is that this guy reads, his mission is to read 1,000 biographies and then talk about them, dissect them in his podcast. Simply an amazing podcast, like this particular podcast that you're listening to. And I would encourage you that in your search for understanding and in your search for knowledge, you should have a thirst and a desire to gain as much understanding, so that when you leave this earth, you have exhausted everything. And certainly want to encourage you to take advantage of that. And that's why, to me, reading amazing books really can just set you apart. And you know the difference when you go to a party and you talk to somebody, and I guarantee you, somebody that's an amazing conversationalist and somebody that can carry a conversation from one person to the next. A lot of times, I bet you they're a pretty strong reader, or they spend a lot of time in communication like that. And it really does help them formulate their ideas, their words, and it just makes a huge difference. And I know that right now, a lot of young men are like, man, I just don't know what to do. And I get that. Just start with one book. find a book that you really gravitate towards, read that book through and through. And if you like it, read it a second time. I read books twice or more if I like it. Not every book, but there are a lot of books that I've read multiple times. But I really would encourage you to get out of your comfort zone, grab that book, crack it open. Cause I actually like reading physical books, but if you're like, well, I just can't do that, then get it on your phone and start swiping every page one at a time, and it will make a difference. And trust me when I say this, even in a short period of time, if you read a couple of books, you'll notice the difference. Your vocabulary will change. Your thoughts will change. I mean, reading has a profound effect on us in so many ways. If you're struggling with loneliness, trust me, you'll realize that there is a big world out there waiting for you to do something amazing. And sometimes we just need that spark that could come from a really good book, a really good idea, a really good story, because that's the thing that's been moving us since the beginning of time. I mean, and we've been telling stories since we were drawing paintings on cave walls, and that's never going to change. And now these are our cave walls. And so grab one of these books. Doesn't have to be a big one. And start there. And trust me when I say this, if you're faithful to it and you give it time, certainly. And again, Chris, I didn't say anything about literacy. And I do know that there are a lot of people that make it through high school and can't read. One simple piece of advice, because I know you don't want to be judged, is find a place where you can go where somebody can teach you how to read if that's an area of struggle for you so that you can better deal with it. I know a lot of people struggle. One of my sons is dyslexic. That can be problematic for people that want to read. That's why they have audiobooks. That's why, I mean, there are a number. So the solution is not, well, because I am X, I can't do that. And what I'm saying to you is that nowadays with technology and everything else that's at our disposal, there is no excuse. And there's so many ways for you to be able to really leverage a good book to help develop yourself. And so I would encourage anyone to do that. And certainly I'll give Chris my contact information and my LinkedIn link so that you can connect with me if you want some advice about a good book. I don't care where you are. I'm happy to talk with you and encourage you to make reading a part of your life. It's a muscle. It's a muscle. You build it on a regular basis and you build it each time you turn a page. And so my muscle, I may not be huge, but my muscle, I feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger from a reading muscle perspective, because that's how
Yeah.
much I read and
Well,
how much
Randy,
I
you
enjoy it.
said several things that I love to share, and I couldn't have said it any better than you did. Just the impact and the benefits and how much reading can help you in many different areas of life, even just opening up, getting you involved in more conversations with different people, allowing you to be at the table is important. And so, Randy, man, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today, because I think anyone
Thank you.
who listens or watches this is going to take at least one nugget from this conversation that they're going to be able to apply or share with somebody else. And so, man, you brought the fire today, and I'm like, man, everything Randy was saying, I can't say it any better. That is absolutely perfect. And so, Randy, keep doing what you're doing. Keep
Man,
inspiring people. Keep talking to people.
yes,
You're
sir.
having an impact. I mean, even people like me who follow you on LinkedIn. I was like, I got to get Randy on the podcast because he's speaking to me. And so, you don't know how many people you're affecting out there, but you are having an impact. Know that. And so keep doing it,
Right.
man.
Thank you so much. And my encouragement to you is keep pressing record, keep allowing people to share their stories, because what you're doing to promote literacy and promote book reading, especially for young men, because again, as I said, right now it's a struggle and we are fighting with this device that we carry around with us. And I mean, this is a blessing and a curse at the same time. And so I would say that most anyone listening to your podcast, if you take a moment to set aside some time to start reading, to create and build that habit, it will pay off. It will pay off tremendously. So keep listening to this podcast, keep being encouraged by what Chris and his guests are sharing. And trust me when I say this, you will be a
That's
different
right. Well,
person.
we appreciate the kind words, Randy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this.